Hello. Okay. So I apologize for the issues with going live the last couple of times on, if there's any issues, then I think what we're going to have to do is probably just stick to Instagram where things work for sure. So if you're not following me on Instagram now, please do. And then you can join me on the lives on Instagram because it does seem to be that the best quality is on Instagram. I'm going to give it a go on Instagram now. It should work. So if you're not on Instagram already, then I say probably best thing to do is to follow me on Instagram, and I will do my best to keep up, and hopefully Facebook and YouTube will work this time for the lives. Okay, let's see. Hello everyone. So we will see how this goes today. Nice to be back, and thank you for all of the questions I got in. Really helps for starting off the lives, and which is good. What's my number one tip to be able to comprehend films and TV dialogue? I think that really is just exposure and overexposure to the medium so that you can really get into it. And I found doing sort of the watching with subtitles often helped. Sometimes you can get carried away with just reading or just listening and not paying attention to both. So I think if you're really, really into the program, remember what your goal is for. It's to get into, sort of get out of the program as well. Something. Hey Brian, I can see people on Facebook. That's good, and on YouTube, which is good. Last time we couldn't. It was a nightmare, but those tend to work a lot better. Salam, Stadia. Okay. Ruby. Okay. So the next question I got was, does it happen that I memorize new phrases and then use them as someone? What do you think? So yeah, what I would tend to do is if I'm trying to learn something new and I'm focusing on something, so I want to explain or express something in a language, I'll tend to learn how to say it, and then I will use it as quickly as possible and as many times as possible. So I tend to set myself these goals to sort of get it into different conversations and things like that. Hey, nice to see you all joining. Wow, it's good. Yeah, well, I'm in North Macedonia at the moment. Not right in Skopje right now, but I'm in North Macedonia. Hello. So yes, I think that it's good to learn things that you are going to use and make yourself this sort of goal of trying to get it into the conversation as soon as possible. Konbanwa, konbanwa. Genki desu ka? Nice to see you all coming in. Wow. What portion of the time do I dedicate daily to language learning for maintaining? I tend to just use languages as and when I need them. I don't really worry too much about maintaining them. I saw Steve Kaufman made a video about this, saying that he didn't really worry about maintaining them. And I've got to say that I agree. I don't really worry too much about maintaining things. Oh, wow, okay. If you're moving to Scope, so please do. I'm always happy to see friendly faces and to see people in my community. So obviously, depending on what happens with COVID, but of course, if you're moving over for a while, then very nice. Hello, salam. Nice to see you. Feliz Navidad, también, gracias. Wow. 日本語のちょっと、日本語はちょっと。Okay. Alles in Ordnung? Ja, sehr gut, danke. Vielen Dank, Seria. Okay, so if someone learning kanji is struggling with kanji, any tips to remember better? I found learning the history of kanji. So I haven't studied that many kanjis in the Japanese language, but I have studied some kondusai, so I actually learned a number of my Chinese signs and found that they stuck a lot better when I knew the history behind them, and then I learnt the stroke order, and I felt it sort of flowed into a pattern with my muscle memory, having to write them, and also knowing what they represented. So understanding the elements, the parts of the characters, I found quite interesting. Hi, primeiro, tudo bem, amigo? Tudo bem, obrigado, Carlos. Tá legal. Nice to see you. Bonjour, bonjour, bonsoir pour moi, enfin, bonjour, et bonne fête. Merci, c'est gentil, Jean-Baptiste. Merci. Bonne fête à toi aussi. Hein? Let me just see. Okay, so, you're writing in Korean, I love it. I'm almost getting there. Ni hao, ma. Okay. And then I've got a question here about, let's see. Can one learn 4 languages at one time? One is enough, but I want to learn so many, like Ernie the Daily Learner. Yeah, you can learn as many as you want, I guess. Depends how much time you've got to do it, because the more you do, the more you split your time. So you can, in theory. I think learning ones that are similar to ones you already speak is probably a good way to start, and then learn a couple or 1 or 2 max of the more different, more complicated, challenging languages for you from your point of view. So yeah. Do you think it will help to record your own voice while practicing pronunciation for languages like Chinese or Korean, especially for tone of Chinese? Potentially, Della. It's recording your own voice is good if you can compare it and if you can use that to also improve. If you reinforce your mistakes, it's not always the best thing, but it can be good actually to listen back to get feedback and then hear and listen to the mistakes you make with pronunciation, especially with a language like Chinese. And Korean too, because I mean, obviously the vowel sounds are quite sometimes different. Yeah. Salut, comment vas-tu? Très bien, merci, c'est gentil. I understand the saga is an Old Norse by Snorre Sturlason. Olga, good question. I'm not sure. You'd definitely be able to start looking at it and understand bits, especially with your background, Olga, because you're extremely good at languages, and I know that you've already mastered a number of the Scandinavian languages, so I imagine you would. So yes, I think probably you would. B2 is quite a good level. Pozdrav iz Hrvatske, puno sam naučio od tebe, hvala. Stari Richarde, nisam toliko star, ali hvala ti puno, nema na čemu. Sai Richard, gaman að sjá þig, já, gaman að sjá þig, Vanessa, hvað segir þú gott? Let's see, so I'm trying to keep up with the questions here, sorry. Okay, it's so nice to see you all joining, so thank you so much for coming in. I did some Spanish and then Portuguese at the same time. I would think that learning Spanish and Portuguese from scratch at the same time is actually not the best idea, simply because they're too similar and it will get very confusing. I've not met many people who have done that before. I would probably say pick something that sounds a lot different, or is a lot different. I always think learning 2 languages from the beginning in the same language family is not always the best way of doing it, but you can try it and see, particularly if you learn, I'd say European Portuguese and Spanish would be the easier one to do than, say, Brazilian, because Brazilian and European Spanish are both open mouths. When you speak, they have quite an open sound to them both, which I think lends itself more to being confusing. Whereas if you picked like a very European Portuguese, it might be easier, but I would generally say pick something a little bit further away. Otherwise it does get a bit confusing. Как русский язык, язык украинский? Ага. Я понимаю по-украински, когда я слушаю, но я не говорю, потому что никогда я не изучал украинского. Я только прочитал, что он LinkU, там есть тоже история по-украински, и И это было интересно для меня, потому что это было первый раз изучать, слушать украинский язык. И я понял хорошо, но иногда на украинском есть тоже и разных, разные слова. И поэтому это 100% не понимаю, но понимаю хорошо, думаю. И когда я был в Украине тоже, я понимаю, когда я говорю по-русски, и они по-украински. Okay, reading, listening, speaking. I'm trying to catch up with all of these. Sorry about this. One second. Имам 26 година и пратим вас. Рад барем 6-8 година. Hvala ti, Ivan. Ivane, super. Hvala ti puno. To je dobro. Quand j'ai appris le néerlandais, j'ai progressé beaucoup plus rapidement parmi les étudiants de niveau similaire. J'avais moins peur de parler et de faire des erreurs. Oui, ça c'est vrai. À mon avis, il ne faut pas avoir peur à faire des erreurs. Moi, je fais même des erreurs en anglais. C'est ma langue maternelle. Et aussi en français. Des fois, même, j'ai appris le français quand j'avais à peu près 5 ans, 6 ans. Je fais des fautes de temps en temps. Je me trompe, hein. Mais c'est normal, hein. Je suis un être humain comme toi. Vous pouvez répondre en français ou en anglais partout. Ah, ok, pour tout le monde, merci. Pas de problème, je vais répondre en français. Thanks for your answer. I'm planning to study Icelandic and I'll read the sagas. Olga, I think you'll do very well with the sagas. I think you do very well with Icelandic. You're an absolute legend. So everyone, if you don't know Olga Cueva, she is just a really remarkable person, and she's been learning all these great languages, and she spoke at the Polyglot conference this year, and she performed a fantastic piece, or many pieces actually, on the piano, multilingual as well, and that's on the Polyglot conference Facebook page. You can still listen to her singing in different languages. It was actually quite impressive, and her video will be out soon too, so you'll be able to hear more about her story. Is there an FAQ list of, okay, to avoid during Q&A? I don't want to make you say the same things again and again. Alexei, there isn't really an FAQ list, but people can submit questions to me ahead of the call, and that you can do via my Instagram. Usually I put a sort of a question on my Instagram story the day before, so you can do that for sure. I'm planning to learn the tonal language. I already have. I've studied Elton. I spoke Thai a little bit as a child because my stepmom's from Thailand, and so I spoke that a little bit from the age of about 8. And then I studied some Mandarin, and I think that's it really for the tonal languages. I haven't really studied another tonal. I don't, carefully speaking, also has tones, but I don't think many of them. I mean, some native speakers are conscious of the tones, but I don't really think too much about them when I speak them in European languages so much. I've got to be honest. I think more about sort of the Chinese things of the world. Okay, cool. Let me just go back to one of the other questions that I got in ahead of this. Do you have any tips for learning? Yeah, absolutely. You can. There are some really cool sites in Icelandic that you can get. Íslenska fyrir alla is a good site. So Íslenska fyrir alla. So it's well, alla is ALLA. So it's Icelandic for all, basically, is what it means. And on there they've got some good dialogues and recordings, so you can definitely do that. Okay. Trying to catch up with these. Okay, let me go back to some of the questions I got here already in. One of my favorite resources for finding people to talk with in a target language, actually, I think probably it would have to be italki. I find italki on the internet, for example. Italki is pretty useful for that, because I find teachers, and I find that quite good. And you can also get into the community. The community is on the phone, and you can also practice languages there as well. I've not been doing it so much, but I have done things like that in the past, and I think just because of time, unfortunately, at the moment, but But yeah, I find italki pretty good. And in fact, I still have when they gave a sort of a special code for me to be able to basically give everyone who signs up for italki $10 towards the first lessons. So if you've never been on and you want to sign up, it's in my bio on pretty much, I think on all of the channels, on the Polyglot Conference channels for sure. I think I've put it um, in my channels on Instagram, Twitter, and yeah, Instagram and Twitter, I think it is. There's a link tree, and you can click on it and you can get $10 from italki. So feel free to do that. I don't get anything out of it, only that you get $10, which is for just referring you, right? Which is nice. Let me see. Okay. Pozdrav iz Slovenije. Pozdrav. Okay. Let me see. Okay, I've done the four languages one. How do you stop thinking in your mother tongue when speaking in a foreign language? Fabio, this is something I find quite interesting because people talk about this thinking in the language. I think that we think in our language. I know that I've had internal monologues in my language and in other languages, but my instant reaction is actually not in any language. My instant reaction is just in thoughts and feelings, and then the language comes out afterwards. And I think focusing on that fact and learning more words for the same things helps you to reduce the thinking or making those internal dialogues more automatic. I think that's the kind of thing that's how my opinion is, and then the words come later. Yeah. Currently, I'm in the middle of an intensive 30-day learning program for Korean. Oh, wow. Okay. Now I'm wondering, oh, it cuts out. Sorry. Okay. That's really, really cool that you're doing that. Sirikathy learns, I think, join me. Let me know what you're getting up to because I see you on Instagram. So yeah, I didn't see the rest of the question now. It didn't come up for me. Sorry. Nice to see you too, Aslan. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Çok güzel. Let's see. So, moi mitä kuuluu? Minulle kuuluu hyvä. Kiitos. Entä sinulle? Okej, imamo makedonski jezik, govorim broj zborovi koji se prihvataju od albanskog jezika. U stvari, na makedonski nema toliko mnogo ovakva zborovi od albanskog jezika, ama ima zajednički zborovi što se dojdeni od turskog, na primjer. Mnogo ima ovakva, što za makedonci se makedonski ne znaat, makedonci generalno ne zna da postoje takvi zborovi na albanski. I istovremeno ima, u suštini ima i vo turski jezik, vo grčki jezik, izvini, isto tako ima takvi zborovi i vo grčki jezik i od turski i isto tako postoje i na albanski i na makedonski. Arno, si mislim da može bi ima poveke zborovi od grčki na albanski. Može bi. Ima poveke italijanski, 100%. ama take, generalno. Okay, what's my favorite music or a singer or composer or any particular style? Olga, I actually really like, in Swedish, I really like Lisa Ekdahl. She sings what they call this jazz, but it's not really jazz when she sings in Swedish. It doesn't feel so jazzy. Her English songs I'm not as fussed on, but I do like her in Swedish. And I'm actually quite into a Maltese group at the moment called The Travellers, and they've got kind of this like poppy type music, but I really, really like it. So it depends on the language and the music, but yeah, at the moment, The Travellers are my favorites at the moment. I listen to them every time I've got some spare time. I put The Travellers on and I really enjoy it. You can find them on YouTube if you're interested. The Travellers, if you put The Travellers Malta, then you'll find them for sure. How do you maintain your languages? I don't try. I just maintain them by using them for work, for pleasure, for my family life, for that kind of stuff. And that's kind of how I do it. Svenska. Okay, ja. Resources for Italian. Oh, there are so many for Italian. It's almost impossible to cover that in a question, to be honest, because there are just so many of them. I think it's one of those languages you have to go to a bookshop and just look through and see what works for you. Wie oft benutzt du Deutsch jeden Tag? Also jeden Tag, ja, eigentlich. Also es kommt drauf an, wenn ich was für meine Arbeit mache oder so, dann ja, kommt drauf an, was es ist. Und dann auch mit meiner Tochter, dann sprechen wir auch tagtäglich Deutsch. Und ja, wie soll ich sagen? Ich meine, vielleicht, ja, kommt drauf an, etwa eine halbe Stunde, eine Stunde oder so. Aber es ist nicht so wie Mazedonisch zum Beispiel die erste Sprache, die ich benutze, so zu Hause sozusagen, weil ich ja mit meiner Frau auf Mazedonisch rede und dann wir ja alles auf Mazedonisch machen. Ne? Aber Deutsch, es kommt schon häufig vor, dass ich Deutsch rede. Германският язик повеќе сличен на данскиот язик, али шведскиот. Нема многу разлика, наискрено, Тим, нема многу разлика. Поради тоа што усуштина се од истата јазична група, значи нема многу разлика измеѓу вака шведскиот и данскиот, колку има зборови од германскиот, си мислам дека горе-долу е нешто слично. Hi Sam, that's nice. Thank you. You've been studying Hebrew for 6 months and you're probably at B2 C1 level. Wow, after 6 months, I would never get to B2 or C1 level in Hebrew after that amount of time. That's amazing. I want to start studying Arabic. Should I start with Dialect or MSA? You're living in Israel. Okay, that helps. So I would say, okay, it's very difficult. There are two schools of thought on this. If you learn behind it, is that you learn MSA and everybody is taught MSA at school in the Arabic-speaking world. And so whether you're from Morocco, or whether you're from the Gulf, or whether you're from the Levantine countries, you will then be able to communicate with each other because you can always call on the MSA word that you don't know from each of those dialects. That's the idea behind it. Same with sort of some grammatical structures potentially as well. But that's the idea behind learning MSA first. The reality is that it does take extra time because you have to then, it's basically like learning Latin and then learning the Romance language you want to learn, right? It's a bit like doing that. But that's just the situation at the moment with the Arabic world. So depends on what you want to do. If you just want to speak to people who speak Palestinian or other Levantine variations of Arabic, then you could potentially just do that. If you want to speak it and then use it more widely, then I'd say go with MSA. Hvordan går det med norsk? Ja, venter på deg i Norge. Ja, takk, Marcos. Ja, det går bra med norsken. Jeg kan ikke snakke så godt nå. Snakker aldri norsk her. Ja, det er bedre for meg på svensk. Ja, det er okay. Listen to the example after your Q&A, you mentioned her. Yeah, she sounds really nice, doesn't she, Olga? I'm glad you liked her. Oletko opiskellut suomen kieltä? Olin Helsingin yliopistossa, mutta nyt ei tiedä hyvä suomea. Makedoniassa en ole suomalaita. En puhu suomea nyt. Если ikada posjetio Ohridsko jezero, vrijedak posjetio. Sam bio. Bio sam puno puta na jezeru. Stvarno. Naistina je lepo. Zelo lepo. Let me see. Okay, let me see if I can get back to these questions. I'm so sorry. There are so many questions. So if I don't get to yours or I don't see yours for any reason, please do not be offended. I will always do my best to read as many as I possibly can. And unfortunately, it looks like Facebook has given up the ghost. But YouTube, you're still here, and so are you on Instagram, which is great. Okay, I'm going to go back to some of the questions here. Can grammar be naturally acquired by immersing in the language? Yes, it can, language pills. In fact, probably the best way to internalize the grammar is by being exposed to it a lot and then using it in turn and repeating that process over and over again, because then it becomes more automatic. I think that is definitely the best way to do it. You're welcome. In being grammatically correct, is it really important when you're having a daily conversation? Absolutely not. Being grammatically correct is lovely, something a lot of people want to be. Is it the most important thing in the world? No, the important thing is actually being able to get across your idea. Hola de Brazil. Hola. I think that the most important thing is communication. That for me is the most important thing. Did you learn other languages one after another? Is accent important? Can I learn a language without grammar? I think that goes back to the point you learn grammar as an input, internal part of the language, and so to communicate ideas. Language is basically, the grammar is basically a vehicle to just express what you need to express. So I never try and worry too much about it. It's good to have an understanding of it because it's like sort of knowing why something happens. Is it the end of the world if you don't study grammar as its own subject? No. And is accent important? Pronunciation is important, because without good pronunciation, it's difficult to understand what people are saying. So some countries find it easier to understand poorer pronunciation because they use them more for foreigners learning the language. So English is one example where we can actually bend our ears quite well to our own language and understand people speaking very easily, even when they pronounce things a little bit off. But other languages, I'm going to give my home language as an example, Macedonian, would find it very difficult if the pronunciation is not spot on, and also, even unfortunately, even accents do tend to throw them because they're not used to hearing people speaking the language. How do you find suitable resources for a target language? Well, that's a big question, and it would depend on the language and depend on what you've got. Some languages have got lots of materials already, and it's just a case of looking in a bookshop. Other languages, you need to start being a bit more inventive, so looking for resources online. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Absar, thank you very much. That's very kind. I would definitely love to improve my Finnish. You teach Finnish on your channel. I have to catch up on that then. Yeah, Absar, I'll have to have a look and see if I can improve my Finnish with you. That would be so cool. You'd like to hear my opinion on the shadowing technique, Louise? Yeah, I don't use it myself. I kind of I found it actually like it could be a useful thing to do for sure, because you're sort of listening to something and repeating. For the pronunciation, I think possibly I find it useful. I don't use it very often, but yeah, as its own thing, for example. But yes, it could be. Do you know a bit of Turkish? Evet. I do know some Turkish. I studied it at the Yunus Emre Institute in Skopje, and I studied it to B1 level. I passed the B1 exam. Which language did you find hardest to learn, Russian or Polish? Russian, because it was the first of that language family, side of the language family that I learned. So because it was the first one, Russian. Polish was easier because I'd learned Russian and other Slavic languages before it. But otherwise, I think if you were new to Slavic languages, there's not much difference. Yeah. And Britain forever, when Henry ever lockdown. Yn anodd iawn, dwi'n meddwl. Hello, Deutschland, hello, welcome. Okay. How do we manage to stay motivated? it's not something that stays, right? I don't stay motivated. So sometimes I do feel these kind of waves like everyone else of sometimes it's difficult, sometimes I just don't have the energy, sometimes I just don't feel like studying like everyone else. And because I've got other things to do, because I just want to veg and watch Netflix and do very little. So sometimes that happens to me as well, and it's quite normal. And I think it's good to accept that and then think, okay, but is this how I want to, just question yourself, is this how I want to just spend this amount of time? What do I want to be able to say next month that I've achieved? And set some very basic goals. Because if you set the basic goals, then you know what you need to do as a bare minimum to move forward. And that's a good thing. So even if you're in one of those sort of downward troughs, what I tend to do is say, okay, well, I can at least write 5 or 10 things out in a book. It'll take me like 10 minutes. And then I can go back to my Netflix and just veg, right? And I find that helps because then once you start a little bit, you get excited about it again. And if you've got a natural interest in languages like I have, you do get back into it. It's quite strange how it helps itself. What's my number one tip for Prime videos? I think I've read that one. Let me just make sure I'm reading the right ones. Okay. How do you deal with code mixing when learning a foreign language? I don't worry too much about it. Sometimes I do mix things up. It's normal, especially when you're learning lots of languages. It's completely normal. And yeah, it's weird. Some words, for example, are the same in 2 languages but have a very different meaning. Practice is the important thing, and then it gets better. Should I learn the grammar first or learn how to have daily conversation? I think learning how to chat with people about things that are important to you is important. Okay. How do you find suitable resources? Okay, I think we've done those ones, and I think we're nearly there. How do you manage to program your language experience? So I'm doing this at the moment with Korean. So if you want to follow along, please do join me on the blog and speakingfluently.com, and you can follow along with it. I'll be releasing a new video on Tuesday about my work with Korean, my study in Korean, and what I'm doing and what I plan to do over the next year. Please do join. How can you speak so many languages at such a high level, and how do you keep them? I use 5 of them at home. Road to Polyglots. I use 5 of them at home, so that helps. And then I also work in a number of languages too, which also helps. So yeah, that's kind of why I do it. And otherwise, I don't advise anyone to particularly do what I've done. It's something I've just needed to do and wanted to do, and it's worked out. I'm missing anything here? Okay, where is he answering? I'm answering on all the channels actually. Barrios. I'm answering on Instagram, on YouTube, and I was on Facebook, Giovanni. I don't know, but you've written that 3 times, so I can see you. Olga, do you use any online dictionaries? Sometimes, I sometimes do, but not that often. Just depends on what I'm doing. But yeah, sometimes. The week in Hungarian. A few of them are, and it's basically the middle. And many Hungarians don't realize that they have Slavic words like that in such basic vocabulary. And their word for Thursday is Četvrtak, I think it is, which is 4th day. It's Četvrtak or Četvrtak, depending on which Slavic language you speak, or Četvrtok in Macedonian. And so you've got this word in Hungarian that is not Slavic, obviously, and it's got this word for Thursday, which is Četvrtak, and it's basically the 4th day from a Slavic language. Hurrah! I love it. I love these things. Hola, tudo bem? What's the most productive? Listening, speaking, reading, writing. I think all of them are pretty useful to do, actually. I think using all of your skills is really important. How can I maintain my languages? By using them is the simple answer. What's the most, okay, how to learn Hebrew alone in the shortest time? if you can try and get hold of the Prolog, Prolog materials, they do the Ulpan course, which I think is one of the best courses for learning a language. And they write all the materials for that in Israel for learning Hebrew for people that make Aliyah, which means going to spend time in or live in Israel. So if you want to learn Hebrew, yeah, definitely Prolog has some really cool materials for it. And they start with the stuff that you need to know. So that's my tip for Hebrew. They also have videos as well, like so you can do video courses to get into the basics, and you get into it quite quickly. So you can do that on sort of, there's an app store or whatever you want to use, you can find them. What's your take on studying dead languages? Absolutely fantastic thing to do. I've studied Old Icelandic. I studied that at university, and I found it quite interesting to do. So yeah, definitely. Can you show us how to take notes when studying a new language? Oh wow, okay. Potentially, if you follow me on the Korean journey, then you'll see how I do it. So do follow along. And I think I got to the end of the questions that were sent in. So it means I can turn my attention to any questions I missed here. So if I did miss anything, please do let me know. Just what a job through government or, okay, with linguistic capabilities, would you suggest a job through the government or corporate businesses? Depends on what you want to do. Either really works. I've worked in both areas. I've worked in the public and private sectors. So I worked for business in the very beginning, just had a few years in business, working in IT, in fact. And then I joined the British Foreign Office, and I worked with them for a few years as well. And I enjoyed both. And more recently, yeah, I've just working in private businesses, and I like both. It just depends on what you enjoy. The only thing I'll say is, depending on the kind of government work you do, you tend to use the language most, depending on the project you work on, obviously, but you tend to use the language most that you use as the home language of that ministry. So it would depend on what kind of government job you went for. How old am I? I am 43. Mir dita, mir en drama. See no star, mir. Any special advice for approaching Slavic languages Czech coming from English? Lisa, it's definitely a fun thing to do. Czech was my first Slavic language, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. It definitely felt like I was swimming in treacle for a little bit because it took so long to remember the words. So patience is probably the biggest thing I can give you as advice. If you feel like it's taking ages, it's normal. It took me ages too, and it just to remember the words. Seriously, it's a bit. It can be a bit of a nightmare. But it's fun and it's rewarding, and Czech is doable, so you'll get there. Also, there are a number of cool books as well. I think the one that we used at university in Prague was Communicative Czech, and then we used the advanced one that I used was called, I'm going to translate it into English, Czech for Advanced Students. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's basically that is a big green and white book that we had that we bought in the Czech Republic. But yeah, there's Communicative Czech. There are also Czechina pro život is a really good course. Czech for Life. That's a pretty good course, and that's quite new. And they have at least 2 levels, maybe 3 levels. May have a beginner's level as well. And the other one that they had that I used, and I found that quite handy sometimes. Okay. Let me see. You should speak a little bit in Macedonian to Lindy Bortas, so that she can see how beautiful Macedonian sounds. Oh, thank you. Yeah, Macedonian is obviously a nice language. I'm a bit biased, but yeah, maybe one day I will. I say she can hear it. Eu estou aprendendo português. Eu sei que falo português europeu, português brasileiro e português brasileiro também falo outros sotaques. Não, somente isso. Português de Portugal é português do Brasil. Então, isso. Não, mais nada. Qual sotaque é mais difícil? Eu preferir alguém em sotaque. Eu penso que, para mim, o sotaque brasileiro mais aberto é também no Brasil. É melhor falar com um sotaque mais. A pronúncia mais brasileira. Mas em Portugal é um pouco diferente, porque falar com um sotaque mais português, mais europeu, mais fechado, é, é melhor. Então, depende muito do país. Do país. Do país. Yeah, it gets a bit weird changing backwards and forwards, but yeah, I think definitely it depends on where you're going to and what you're doing is which accent you choose and which accent you go for. I can see there are a lot of messages coming in. Unfortunately, today I have to finish a little bit earlier, and I will do my best to come back to questions. So please do make sure you submit questions to me as well. And if you've got something that's really important, and I will do my best to see them. I don't get to see everything, but I will do my best to see as many of the questions and answer as many as possible. Jullie tonen Macedonië, Joshum larg, Shibris. Jo, nu că știu larg, Shibris. Ashtu është vetëm no, pesor nga Tirana këtu. Nuk është shumë larg. Jo. So yes, if you have any questions that are really burning, please do feel free to drop them on the questions on Instagram, and I will be very, very happy to answer them. I managed to get through the questions I had today. I tend to just copy them across before I start, and yes. Oh, okay. So nice to speak to you. Nice to speak to you. Besor, Shumir, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you all next week, and hopefully YouTube will work and Instagram will work, and we'll see if Facebook starts working again. Fingers crossed, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the holidays, and I guess when I next see you, it will be 2021. So have a very happy new year and see you soon. Bye-bye.